Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Rice, and his wife, Jeannie. Michael and Jeannie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rahma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeannie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice.
And the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Rice. And today is day number 96 of our Memorial Day celebration. And Dr. Tim and David are both with us. Hello, Michael.
Well, hello there. Welcome to the show, everybody. We're delighted to be with you on this warm Chicago day. It's about 90. I think it's up in the low 90s right now in Chicago. Sunny, beautiful day. And we're celebrating Memorial Day as we have been for the last 96 days. So this is celebration day number 96. And, you know, I maybe we should find another word than celebrate because really there's not much there to celebrate. The real thing is to be remembering memorial and remembering those who have been forced to pay the ultimate price, and whether that's that they've been forced to kill. You know, on Memorial Day, David was talking to us about his time in Vietnam and that the most difficult, quote-unquote, sacrifice he had to make was to kill someone. And it's a horrendous thing to ask of a human being, and certainly as a destroyer of human life. And so we're looking to celebrate or to honor those who have been killed or forced to murder, to be injured, maimed, emotionally, physically, bring those injuries home. People that have been touched. The cost of war is so horrendous, it's insane. And we're looking to eliminate it. And of course, you might say, why? Well, how could you possibly do that? Well, what we're committed to is to asking each person each day to be responsible for one thing in your life today, one thing that you're willing to take responsibility for and to move through, to let go of. And that is any form of hostility or fear that you hold in you. I'm going to ask you to apply the forgiveness process and work on removing that. And we can get enough people on a daily basis removing their hostilities and fears. War is going to disappear from planet Earth. And so that's what we're here to facilitate, one of the things we're here to facilitate. And if you're not familiar with the forgiveness process that we're talking about, you can go to our website, www.whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says Download Worksheets. And if you click that link, you'll see the first 4 links of, I don't even know, dozens of links that are there. The first 4 links are all about the forgiveness process. So the first one is a copy of the chapter 24 of my book. Second one is an actual worksheet, the how-to of forgiveness. Third one, listen to that and you will be inspired. The third link is an MP3 of a radio show we did with a very brave young woman named Lynn, who really laid her soul bare and worked through just some awesome work in our conversation on our radio show a few weeks ago. So if you would tap into that show and give it a listen, it will change your life. And then the fourth one is still another sample show where we walk a young man through the process of forgiveness around an issue in his life. And it's a particularly meaningful demonstration because it shows how the mind can trick us into talking about everybody and everything else while we leave ourselves out of the equation. And so the idea of this work is to bring ourselves back into the equation and to become aware of the internal stresses that we have, and begin to dismantle and disable those stresses. And the process for doing that is called forgiveness. It has nothing to do with letting other people off the hook for what's going on inside of us. It's the way that we change what's going on inside of us. So we welcome you to the show. Glad you're here. Jeannie, do we have any callers? Dr. Tim, welcome. David, welcome.
There's no callers, but there is a conversation already going on in the chat room. And
awesome.
someone who had just kind of, I guess, happened upon us, and they wanted to know what they need. Let me roll back up so I can exactly read their question. Does anyone have any advice about how to stop from being cyber-stalked or harassed? And I wrote back and said perhaps they needed to look at what part of them is drawing the energy in to be stalked, and have they in the past experienced similar feelings of either being stalked or having their space not respected and experienced the harassment before. And they wrote back and said yes, but that they are not to blame, and they're tired of people saying that somehow it's their fault. And so I responded back and I said, did you hear me blame you? I think not. Forgiveness, not pardoning, is the other person, not pardoning the other person, but forgiveness is removing the part within you that keeps asking for that experience and getting rid of the feelings that it brings up for you. And then Tim put in, it's not about fault or blame. It's about handling and dismantling the negative emotions that I feel when bad things, and you put bad things in quotes, happen to me. So perhaps you can address that, of how we draw things into us.
Awesome.
And that,
awesome.
and
sure.
not that it's their fault, not that it's their fault or to blame, but how we do have a part in what happens.
Well, and the tool of responsibility in this work, a lot of people, when what we call the non-being mind, the mind based in hostility or fear and defensiveness, here's the word responsibility. It doesn't hear anything to do with responsibility. What it hears is, you mean it's my fault, I'm guilty, I'm to blame, I'm the one who's bad, I'm the one who's wrong. And, of course, you just listen to that word, responsibility. There's nothing in there about anything to do with guilt, fault, blame, bad, wrong, evil, nasty, wicked. There's just none of that in there. The word responsibility is a tool. And what the tool does is it allows you to recapture the parts of your mind with which you set up your life. You know, probably the greatest atrocity done to us as human beings down through the ages, and that we've bought into, is that we've had hidden from us the fact that we are by nature creators. Now, that's an idea that everybody loves, unless the creation isn't going so well, and then they always want to point the finger at somebody else. And so the offering is that you're involved in your life. You're not independent of your life. Nothing can come to you that you don't energetically ask for. And all you need to do is hold a defense about being, crowded by someone, about being taken over, what have you. And that literally, I've shared several times on the show the work I had the privilege of doing about 30 years ago with an awesome gentleman named Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM. Marcel is the kind of guy that if you have a computer today, you have Marcel to thank, because he invented the magnetic coating that allows your hard drive to operate. If you've ever used a light stick at a sporting event, where you break a tube inside a plastic container and the two chemicals mix and you get light. Marcel was 11 years old when he invented and patented that himself. So this is the kind of mind we're working with. Marcel had a camera in his laboratory with which to take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. The minute you put in, oh, somebody is going to attack me, or I don't want anybody to attack me, I literally set up an actual measurable energetic wave, and because I live in an energy universe, somebody has to respond to that wave. Someone's going to resonate and be drawn in and tend to do a behavior that is going to play into that wave that I've set up. That's how energy systems work. So are you to blame for being stopped? No, and no, we would never say such a thing. Are you responsible? Is there a part of you that participates? Yeah, all you have to do is be angry about someone stalking you. And that anger will be enough to draw the next stalker or to energize and cause the stalker to continue. If you start looking at those parts of you and forgiving, that is, going inside yourself and removing those energies that you're responsible for, responsibility becomes the tool that allows you to see the part of your mind that you've dissociated from. And as you forgive, you'll collapse and remove that part of your mind and watch the changes that occur. It's just awesome to see how it all unfolds and how it happens. That would be my input. And, if that isn't making sense to you, if you'd like to call in, I would love to chat some more about that principle because it's a fairly complex one. When we're brought up in a world where we get to play innocent victim, people teach us that it's all everybody else's fault. It's not an easy transition to make, to move into the space of, you mean there's actually a part of me involved in everything that happens in my life? Yes. And my offering is, if you never learn to forgive, I guarantee you get to live the title of my book. Why is this happening to me again? Or we sometimes get people who will call Heartland looking for it, and they'll title the book, Why Are They Doing This to Me Again? You're a participator in your life, and what we're here to support you doing is figuring out, or not figuring out so much as having the tools for how to get in touch with that part of your mind that participates, and then how to change it. It's called forgiveness. Right-hand side of our homepage, www.whyagain.com. The link that says download worksheets. Check it out. It will change your life. And we'd be delighted if you wanted to call. Our calling number is 646-200-4169, 646-200-4169. Now, Tim, I'm sure you've never run into anybody. David, I'm sure you guys have never run into anybody that proclaimed themselves an innocent victim and had nothing to do with what they were going through for the 87th different time. Have either of you guys ever seen that?
Yeah, I think I've seen it a few times. I think I've done it a few times.
Welcome to the human race, right?
Yep. Yeah, I was a very good student growing up. I learned exactly what the world was telling me about how everybody else was causing my feelings. And I struggled with that for many years before I discovered, it simply doesn't work that way.
It always boggles my mind when people ask the question, how did that make you feel? As though something outside of us could make us feel. Feelings are just a warning signal about something happening inside of us. They do not speak of the outside world in any way, shape, or form. But when we dissociate from those feelings, when we deny them and dissociate from them, and we hook them up to an external event, then the event triggers the feelings, and we miss the fact that we were the ones who hooked it up. And with forgiveness, you can be the one that can unhook it and change the dynamic.
Well, and it's a blessing to have that tool, because without it, it's a life of just repeat terror and sadness and pain.
Yeah, and certainly that's the state of the world today, isn't it?
Yep. Go ahead, David.
Well, I'm in total agreement with you on it, Tim. Is to discover that tool. I remember actually when I had my first real awakening that I was in charge of my life back in April of 1990. I know exactly when it was, and from that day forward, I didn't understand how to make the changes and what was going to be involved in the changes. And when I discovered Michael's work and the tools, the one thing that I was always reminded of is this little story about there are three frogs sitting on a. One decides to jump. How many frogs are on the log? Most people respond with the first answer, 2. The truth of it is that there's still 3. Just because one decided to jump didn't mean that it jumped. And just because that I have the tools doesn't change or repair anything. It really is about me applying the tools. And this morning, and I believe we have a couple of people that are on there. If I can go ahead and interject something now about the building the brain cells. I had the I asked a question intuitively about what to do on the show today. And all of a sudden, sitting right in front of me was this paper that I had been carrying for quite a while. So I'd like to just take a moment and maybe use this story or this experiment about what the process is like and why and how to use the tool. And so it might answer the question, why is this so difficult? What is it that I can do? So as an experiment, start with a cage containing 5 apes. In the cage, hang a banana on a string and put stairs underneath of it. Before long, an ape will go to the stairs and begin to climb toward the banana. As soon as he touches the stairs, spray all of the apes with cold water. After a while, another makes an attempt with the same result. All the apes are sprayed with cold water. This continues through several more attempts. Pretty soon, when another ape tries to climb the stairs, the other apes will try to prevent it. Now turn off the cold water, remove one ape from the cage, and replace it with a new one. The new ape sees the banana and wants to climb the stairs. To his horror, all the apes attack him. After another attempt and attack, he knows that if he tries to climb the stairs, he will be assaulted. Next, remove another of the original 5 apes and replace it with a new one. The newcomer goes to the stairs and is attacked. The previous newcomer takes part in the punishment with eagerness. Again, replace a third original ape with a new one. The new one makes it to the stairs as well and is attacked as well. 2 of the 4 apes that beat him have no idea why they were not permitted to climb the stairs, or why they were participating in the beating of the newest ape. After replacing the 4th and 5th original apes, all of the apes which had been sprayed with cold water had been replaced. Nevertheless, no ape ever again approaches the stairs. Why not? Because that is the way they've always done it, and that is the way it's always been around here. And this is one way how habits, policies, and beliefs are framed, formed, and set in the unconscious mind. I changed a little bit. This is supposed to be an experiment. An actual experiment went on. And to me, it illustrates very well of the challenge of using and applying the tools in real life. And I think that Ari has come on the show, and if you would like, Ari, maybe kind of chime in, and Michael, if you want to chime in with Ari and report what it was like being at the workshops last week, and maybe talk about the process of getting you to the process you went through prior to going to the workshop. Are you on there, Ari? Maybe not. Are you on there, Michael?
I'm here. Yep. Jeannie, is Ari on the line?
I did not have Ari's phone number showing up. There is a 312 number in the switchboard, but it's not a number that I have listed for Ari. So, yep. Ari, if this is you on the line, if you would press 1, but it's not the number that I have for him. Oh, okay. I think he just came on. So hold on one second. Hello, Ari.
Awesome.
Hello?
Hey there, young man.
Well, hi there.
Welcome.
We thank you.
Welcome to the show. David just gave you an introduction.
Yes, he did.
So you...
Yeah, I know where he's going with this. I guess it was he was talking about what he calls what do you call it, mind game?
Building the brain cells.
Oh, yeah, well, I call it the mind game. I guess I renamed it. Which is kind of the same thing as building the brain cells. Because within building, you come up against all sorts of barriers, let's phrase them as. And so it's not just building. Sometimes it's unbuilding and then rebuilding better ones. You know, we always have brain cells, but it's a question of which brain cells are we keeping at that time. So it's kind of a building and unbuilding effect for me is what it was. And what he's referring to is this summer, I didn't have a chance to make it down to Heartland, which usually I do. And he came up with, well, I should do worksheets while I'm away energetically, just like I was down there. And at first it was a couple weeks, the first session. And then it came down to, 40 days, 5 worksheets a day, and 10 minutes of breathing, morning and night. I thought, that's a good idea. I can do that. I have never done it, and I've been doing this work for quite some time. But to say consistently that I ever did it for 40 days? Nah, never really did it. 20 days? Yeah. 20 days, stop, and then do another 10, 15? Absolutely. But consistently, it stirred up a lot of good stuff that, or some might say bad stuff, but when you stir up stuff that's been dormant within you, and allows you to get into it and basically release it and forgive it, it's a whole new meaning to kind of stirring and looking at something as, when something gets your upset up, as a very positive thing as opposed to a negative situation. And it gave me a whole new appreciation for the workshop of getting the stress you need. Because if you didn't have stress, you would never get stirred. And then you just have all that soupy, mucky stuff laying in you and just causing all sorts of ill problems. This way you can kind of brush it up, stir it up. It's not necessarily pleasant. See it, deal with it, forgive it, and let it go. And it is quite powerful.
Awesome.
And that's what and the other thing was, I always thought, David, no offense, but you're a little bit of a pest. Because David was like, even if you do this, I'm not going to believe you. I was like, David, I'm not going to lie to you. David's like, no, it's part of the process. I want you to call me. I said, do you want me to do what? He's like, I want you to call me every day you're complete. Again, I thought, all right, it connects me to my commitment that I'm not coming down. I didn't come down this year, and I thought, okay.
Well, you weren't so. Oh, all right. Yeah, come on.
No. I wasn't. I was like, that's kind of. I'm like, well, what if it's late? He said, so what? It's like, what if it's early? It's again, so what? Leave a message on. Just leave a message. Doesn't mean you have to talk. It just means you have to acknowledge that you're done, and that there's someone kind of keeping tabs on you, just watching out for you, and that too. I think it is a very powerful tool, because it is something that, it's easy to become unconscious and go into a different, whatever, excuse game, blame game. There's 100 games we can all play. But, the bottom line is there was, what is it called?
I said, I think Paul Simon had a great song about that one. Sliding away.
Yeah, basically. And then once you're kind of on your, what you think is this really nice slide, you slide back down into the muck. No one tells you that, when you're sliding through the air at the top of the slide, that at the bottom is the muck that you need to stir up to clean. The slip sliding is kind of a nice thing. I actually like that little slide right down. It's just when you get down there and you look around, you're like, "Ooh, boy, this is not good." There's some major cleaning needing going on, and I think that's part of, having that commitment and doing it, is that it also allows you to get out of the muck. It's like one day was a couple short. Dave was like, "Well, the day's not over yet." It's like, yeah, it isn't. Because sometimes when you're sliding down in the muck, it's like, well, what's the purpose of doing another worksheet? Well, the purpose is to keep you.
Are you there, Michael?
I think Ari just dropped off. So, Ari, if you're still listening, you need to call back in. He just disappeared off the switchboard.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me, sweetie?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, he's calling back in. You think about Paul Simon's song, and he puts that line in there: the nearer your destination, the more you're sort of sliding away. And when people start to get close to the deeper issues that they need to work on, that's when they just get terrified and turn tail and run. It's like, I don't want to deal with this. And so I'd never really thought of that song in that context, but, the words slip sliding away. The nearer your destination, the more you slip sliding away. And, boy, that's so right on. And that commitment, David, that you're asking from people when they play building the brain cells game to keep in touch and to just really stay on that commitment is awesome support, because it does pull people through. I know I've got a fellow out in Oregon that's texting me every day when he finishes his 5, and he's just really seeing some major changes in his life. I think he's on about day 26 or 27 now. So
yeah,
cool.
And I think where Art was going with that, Michael, is the idea that there was at least on one occasion that I recall where we were talking because his stuff was up, and he had only done a couple of 3 sheets, and do your sheets and call me back. As he was saying, well, what difference does it matter now? Well, that's when it matters the most. And so he did complete them. He actually completed even more. I think he had done 3, and then he wound up doing 7 instead of doing the 5. And on his own, I think when he comes back on, that he'll acknowledge that by himself, he would have just said, I've done enough. Mine is replicate. It wasn't like he didn't want to, that part of him wanted to, that replicate mine was going to come up with everything. And one of the justifications is, I've already done 3 of them. I did 5 yesterday. I've been doing this for 25 days. What difference does it make? Well, that's the breaking point of the dissociated mind, as you know. It's, to me, its last thing is to imply that this doesn't work. So why do it then? And for Ari to complete that and then to go to the workshops, I think was just really phenomenal. And I hear it in his voice. I've known him a few years, so I hear a real shift in his voice. Are you back on, Ari?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, awesome.
Okay.
We lost you there for a minute, sir.
Yeah, we had technical difficulty. I kind of strangled myself with my own cord while walking around. I thought it would be better to be on the landline, so it was one of those.
Yeah.
But now I'm plugged back in.
You were talking about, Ari, that there was a time, at least this was my last thought around it, was that you were talking around the idea of you had already done so many worksheets, what difference does it matter, and when you're in the middle of it and you're in the slide. So that's when we lost you.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, and what I was saying is about being in the slide, and it's also easy to say at one point during this time I had I would say a time of challenge, so I did 12 worksheets one day. And then, of course, I called David up and said, well, I'm almost good for 3 days now, which, of course, I was joking, but I was certainly not joking. It's like, okay, fine. But it's something that, when you don't, you can always do more, but if you commit to a minimum, you need to, keep that minimum. So even though there was that opening to do 12, it doesn't mean that, now I skip tomorrow and the next day I'll do 3. But I did try that just as a joke, and David, I think, got a good laugh out of it. But I think it's things that do go on in people's minds when they do that. It's like, well, I spent a day doing this. This is good for the week. Well, it's good for the day of the things that came up that day, but not necessarily anything else that you don't know is coming up in the future. Because we can't really predict. We can put out what we want, but we can't predict what's going to really happen and then deal with it at the time. So that's why the everyday kind of, or the 40 is a powerful tool, because it doesn't allow that, well, I have super vitality today and tomorrow I don't. But that's an excuse because yesterday did so good I don't have to do anything today but wallow at the bottom of the slide. So I found it to be a very nice tool. And I did enjoy the slide rides.
Yeah, cool. The fellow I was speaking about out in Oregon texted me 3 or 4 days ago, and here's what his experience is. And he was, I guess at that point, he was around day 24, 25, something like that. He says, "Hi, Michael. Feels like critical mass is imminent. Seeing it everywhere. I especially am starting to see," and he's got "see" in quotes. I think referring to that quote that says, "Those who having eyes do not see." So he's saying, "Are seeing. Thank you again for your willingness to look and see, to seek and find the truth, and for systematizing it in such a way that the reinforcing of our brain cells with correct data is moving along." So the forgiveness process definitely opens a space. And then, Ari, I thought it was awesome how Thursday night you were at the codependence workshop. And can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. My phone's doing some little beeping stuff. But anyway, that Thursday night you were at the codependence workshop, and one of the things we do is give a homework assignment of writing a letter to everybody on your codependence sheet. And I think it was awesome that you went and just worked through that, did that the next day. It's pretty cool. Congratulations.
Well, good. No, that was a good, like I said, I never actually, again, when you talk about completed the whole thing, I never completed the whole thing. You know, I've done pieces of it, but never completed the whole thing. So that's a different kind of space.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's very easy. And it isn't that I didn't want to necessarily. It's just that working through a bunch of them, I never got to that point before where, you know, I when I say complete, I mean where you feel complete. You can always write down an answer in a box. That doesn't mean it is the answer that you really need to hear or really the answer that is answering what, you know, I think you can very easily, I'll speak for myself, I've gone through a lot of times and just filled out things. It's like, oh, fill in the box. It's like, okay, I'll fill in the box. But then you don't get the benefit of it. You know, this time...
And doing it by rote.
Right. Doing it by rote, it's very easy. And, well, it's actually very hard because then you have to remain where you are.
Got it. That's it.
So... You know, it's a trade-off of a little discomfort now for bliss later on is how it works. And that's kind of how I would phrase it. And I did write every letter. You know, it was fascinating because it just came up with new stuff. And the letters really do, because the advice we've gotten and the advice we've given, like I said, just filling in a box. Everyone knows, you know, fill in that box. It can be very different and a very, very different experience.
Yeah.
And doing them all.
It's amazing how we can hide from ourselves, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It is amazing how we can hide from it.
So, yeah.
I mean, some boxes, you know, depending on what you're filling out, but yeah, most are just made to fill in, just a plain box, and that's it. And it doesn't really matter what you put in. The object is to fill the box.
Yeah.
Yeah, the object is to keep the agreement with yourself and build that trust and make that connection that you've done it. That's building success with it. The mind will come up with justifications to not do it. They will even come up with judgments about, well, I'm not doing it right, I'm not telling the truth, and it will do everything. The things that I'm reminded of when I do this, you know what? If I could have figured this out, if I could have done this before, I would have done it. I can't do that. And I'm in that space when that dissociated mind is in charge, that replicate mind is in charge. It can only show what it is that's in it and continue to do that. And that's
the woulda, coulda, shoulda, after the fact, if I would have only known now what I knew then, I would have, is a really nice statement. But you didn't. That wasn't the case. And here you are now. So it's like, okay. You know, you get to choose to do your work and stuff like that or not. It has nothing to do with all the woulda, shoulda, couldas. It has to do with will I. or what's your willingness?
Well, and the game that we've been taught to play in our culture is to hide from ourselves, and the inability of the mind to be aware of and manage its own stresses is the root of all. We talk about the Memorial Day. It's the root of all verbal, physical, and emotional violence. All strife, all separation is all a futile effort to suppress awareness of an internalized stress. And the functioning purpose of behavior in the mind is not to find or seek truth. It's to keep stress at acceptable levels. And if it needs to block truth to do that, that becomes an addiction for many people. And what happens and why a lot of people don't stick with it is because this puts an end to the addiction. You can't dissociate, you can't deny, and continue the game of using those things as drugs and keep doing forgiveness. So as you make a commitment to do the forgiveness work, the addiction of dissociating from things in order to manage stress is totally incompatible. And so no longer can you hide truth. And so the search, in the search for truth, not being something that's assigned to the mind, it's got to become a function of the personal code. And as you do the work, as you do the worksheets, more and more you build into your personal code the safety. One of the key steps in the process, step 2 in the worksheet, of course, is I choose to love truth. And as you do that, 5 times a day for 40 days, you're changing your personal code. And as you do that, and in order to thrive, one's got to cultivate a personal code of loving truth, rather than using protective devices like frustration, anger, attack, escape, excuses, pain, complaints, defenses, or just plain leaving, damaging ourselves and others. All those things are stress management devices, and they're totally incompatible with forgiveness. So that 40-day habit, it makes a major change in a lot of things. And once again, David, I thank you for your brilliance at bringing that forward as a 40-day commitment, or even just the starting off with as a 10-day commitment, as you say, as another way to start to play the game. And that commitment creates a new habit of loving truth, a new piece of the personal code. And it changes the whole life when that happens. It's literally the journey out of the desert into the promised land.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With me, it wasn't even 10 days. It was just, the 9 days going on that you didn't show up for. How about just doing it along with it? And that, it was a very easy thing. And, of course, I thought, of course I should do that. And then it developed into that. But, yes, it was very easy. Even then, I'm not sure if you would have said, 40 days, it would have sounded like a lot. But after 9 days and 11 days, and I said, how many days do I have left? He's like, how many days did I have left? 6? 5? I don't remember. But it was short, so of course I would, finish that up.
Well, fabulous.
Well, you make a good point with it, Ari, and Michael also. One of the things that we have done is because everyone's at a different place in their healing and in their path of what it is they want to be doing. And so we have it set up to make an agreement to do one worksheet a day versus doing it and to do it for 10 days and then recommit to it. And that's what happened with Ari. Ari had agreed to do it for just the remainder. Actually, it was the remainder of the 9-day intensive, and it was about 8 or 9 days or something like that, 7, 8, or 9 days. And at the end of that, in completing that, then he agreed to do it for the next 9 days, for the rest of that intensive. And then we led into, you're on the path. How about just going now and completing and do it for the 40 days? Well, we actually took it for the laws of living, which was going to be 18 more days, which then took him up to about 35 days. And so, now it's easier, how to eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
One bite at a time.
Wherever it is that a person's at, and we're wanting to support each person, so it's flexible with that. And there is, I will let people know, there is a small investment with it. The an expression of appreciation in the form of money in order to participate in the game. And the reason for that is that what my experience is unless someone has something of value that they're invested in, then the tendency for the dissociated mind is to put it off. Oh, there's nothing invested. So we invite you and encourage you to invest. We have it set up where a person can do it for a year, that to make an agreement to do one worksheet for a year. If I don't know if Terry is on here or not. If he is, but then maybe he can press his little hand and come up at the number that you would be looking for. Jeannie is going to be 828. I think it is a new number for Terry. But he may talk about that because Terry has been doing a worksheet, minimum of one worksheet. And for the people that don't know about Terry, he's been doing many more than one a day. He began with doing one worksheet a day for 10 days, and now it's been 2.5 years, better than 2.5 years. Well, let's see, 2 years and 9 months, 2 years and almost 10 months that he's been doing 5 worksheets each day. So you can begin and it just builds into it.
Well, and then there was a point there back a few months ago where he upped his commitment to 10 a day. Jeannie, you started to say something, sweetie?
I was just going to say he's not on there, but someone in the chat room, Melissa, says the forgiveness technique is the best and the worst way of living that she's ever found. It's the best because it works. It's the worst because she misses playing the victim. Oh, well, time to grow up.
Aw, should we call the aw line for you, Melissa? Aw.
So right on, Melissa.
Well, thank you, Melissa, because the truth of it is that it is about growing up. For people that maybe participate in some 12-step program, I remember listening to a fellow, and I thought that he summarized the whole 12-step program when he said the first 3 steps are about giving up. The next 3 steps is about fessing up. The next 3 steps is about making up. And the next 3 steps are about growing up. Which steps are you on? Because that's really, in essence, of what this work is about, is to let go of and I'm less educated about Scripture, and I have my own interpretations about it. You know, when Yeshua was said to be childlike, it wasn't childish. It said to be childlike, to be open and receptive to that, and to let go of the childish ways. Something like that. You may want to comment on how accurate that is or what that may mean, Michael.
Well, I think you're right on, David. That's right on. And Melissa, I love the way you say that because it is so important, and the world puts such value on victimhood. You know, the whole thing of victims' rights, and it's like a red badge of courage, which it's kind of like puts a bullseye on you, and it's time to take the bullseye off and to move forward and start to shift out of the defenses, because when we play this game of blockage of truth, the stress that comes up when truth appears is just enormous. And when you show somebody goes into a defense, and when you show them the nonsensical nature of that particular defense, it's really awesome to watch how the mind will shift its story completely to a completely different defense, and then when it's shown that one's nonsensical, to another and another, and it's all in an effort to avoid truth and justify its position. And the interesting thing that happens when the mind shifts its defense, it instantly forgets that it even used the earlier rationalization that's now been proven untrue, and it actually believes each new lie that it tells. And, I refer to those lies as a weak truth. It actually believes its new defense. And then when you show that defense is so irrational that it just can't stand the light of day, then flip, another total story. Well, it's really about flip, nope. And until one arrives at truth, that tends to be the game. And I've seen people shift defenses a dozen times, and the mind that uses that tactic still maintains it as being logical. It just can't see the folly of its method because it's in blockage of truth. And the mind that's unable to find a defense that works, unable to keep its stress hidden any longer, turns to some form of aberrant behavior, drugs, alcohol. Rage is the most popular drug on the planet. When you confront that mind with truth and its lies just no longer stand the test, that's when it goes into a rage. That's when it goes out and, has a fifth of scotch. You watch people who fall off the wagon. They've maybe been clean for 20 years, and then they start going to a new level of, as David said, fessing up and owning what's going on inside, and the stress starts to build. And when it builds, that's when people who are unwilling to love truth enough to go to the root of it will fall off the wagon. And it's sad, it's a shame, but that's what happens. And, if you think there's some question about that, how do you suppose it would have looked? What do you suppose would have happened if you'd have been the one who said, Mr. Hitler, I think we're making a mistake? You get, that's the extreme example of what do you suppose the story would have been at that point. And a major flaw in the personal code of most people is that when they're stressed, the stress attaches to getting rid of the information that's showing them their blockage, or to get rid of the person that delivers the information. That's the root of all divorce and separation. And the one who shows them the defect in their weak truth becomes the enemy. And blocking information becomes an addiction that leads to deeper and deeper levels of lovelessness. And as you go through that 5 worksheets a day for 40 days, you get to see all of those layers and layers. I mean, years and years and years and decades and lifetimes and generations of blockages and lovelessness, that insanity of lovelessness. And, oftentimes the loveless state proclaims, I'm only doing this loveless act, beating on you, because I love you. Anybody ever heard that line? I'm only doing this. I'm only whacking on you because I love you. Like, well, the kind of personal code that works for the highest and best is one that, when it's stressed, the person's personal code itself directs them to self-correction and healing, to be able to stop and go, oh, I'm stressed. I want to run away. I want to attack. I want to puke on somebody. There's something going on inside of me. Switch my personal code into, this is somewhere where I could start to heal. I could start to work through this. And so that 5 worksheets a day for 40 days supports and assists one in doing that. And how different would the world be today if you'd been the one who went to Mr. Hitler and instead of carrying out his fetish of destruction had responded with, do you really think we're making a mistake? Do you really think there's something in error here? Do you have some feedback on the flaw in my logic? Thank you. How do you suppose the world would be today if Mr. Hitler had responded to that? How do you suppose the world would be today if that person you're blaming in your life today, instead of blaming them, you just said, do I have a blockage in my thinking? I am in pain. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, this pain is pretty familiar. I've been through 10 relationships with it. Yeah, I can remember being 3 years of age and feeling this. Do you think that I need some feedback on the flaw in my logic? Please go to whyagain.com, www.whyagain.com. The upper right-hand corner, there's a link. Right in the top corner on the right, there's a link for this worksheet that we did 3 weeks ago. It is the epitome of what we're talking about, and it's so inspiring. This young lady was just so courageous, and it's so empowering to listen to it and hear the difference. And, her willingness, several layers of really, mega, major life issues she went through in that hour. And her level of willingness, her ability to receive feedback where it would have been easy to turn and puke on me,
She just owned it, and went to such a depth. It was just awesome. And if you happen to be listening, Lynn, we appreciate you, and you've changed a lot of lives with that worksheet, not just your own. So, Jeannie, is there any conversation in the chat room that we need to be aware of?
No, but it's like typical of what you were saying, though, is people asking questions and then they don't really want the answer. They want to remain the victim. And we started out the show answering a question for Energy Star, and I hope if anybody knows Energy Star, they'll send them back to pick up the archive, because as soon as, they were like, I'm not to blame, I'm being harassed, I'm being, stalked and all this other, and it's not my fault that this is happening. And as soon as you started to explain how we draw things to us and that there's no fault or blame in it, but that how we have a part in it, they disconnected and left the chat room.
Yeah.
And so if anybody knows Energy Star, send them back to pick up the show to listen to it, because, the answer that they needed to change what was happening in their life was being given, and then they ran away.
Well, it was really interesting a few weeks ago when we were out in Oregon. We had a young lady who came one night who was in a lot of stress and trauma and pain, and she hung in there and did some great processing work, and then she came back the next night. Jeannie was actually sitting beside her at this point, and why don't you share what happened, Jeannie? It was so funny.
She was sitting there, and she was like, you could tell that she was just really carrying a load, and she asked a question, and before she even finished the question almost, and Michael started to answer it, she stood up and started to leave the room. And it was like, wait a minute, you just asked a question. He's answering your question. And she turned around and went, oh, and sat back down. It was almost as if she didn't acknowledge or even realize that she had asked the question. And so she was leaving before he even got to answer it. And it was just kind of comical, because it was like, almost as she was asking the question, she was leaving the room.
Right. It was like it was coming from somebody else's mouth. Yeah. So are there any other thoughts in the chat room? Ari, do you have any other thoughts? Dr. Tim, do you have any comments on our conversation so far?
Well, I'm in full agreement. It is a difficult thing to break the old conditioning, but it is extraordinarily rewarding. And we've been blessed in this area to have this new resurgence of energy and awareness. I'm getting emails even again today from people who have been to the sessions last week and are looking for venues that you can, for you, Michael, to extend your stay and do more workshops. And I got a series of emails from this friend, a couple of friends who are working together to hit Unitarian churches and Unity churches and the Infinity Foundation in Evanston, and trying to lay the foundation for you to come back and have more venues to speak in and more people to address. And the only reason they're doing that is because they got such tremendous benefit from the two workshops they were able to attend. The benefits are way too numerous to list in a week full of shows, because almost every week in the Mind Shifters group, people come in with more testimonials about how they changed this part of their life for them, and then it changed another part, or a relationship that they didn't know or hadn't had any contact with for years comes back into their life. So I just support anybody who's interested to do what David's encouraging us to do, is just to pick up the tool and put the pen to the paper and watch what happens. Just watch what happens.
Yeah, and it's so empowering to be willing to look at that internalized pain. Though certainly the weak and blustering, when they start to be guided there, will reach out with verbal, emotional, sometimes even physical abuse toward that which bears witness to its own error, because it can't stand the thought that it's an error, that it has to be right. And that's what one of the steps on the worksheet is. I release my need to be right. If you're not in touch with the active presence of love at any given moment, guess what? You're not right. And so when you let go of the need to be right, then you're able to drop down into another level of the mind and clean out another layer that needs to be looked at. So,
and that's the good news, that you're not right. Because if you're right and you're in pain, then this life is about pain. So it's a good thing to find out that I'm wrong and that there's another option. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and he clearly he's right on the verge of understanding that he's causing himself to shut down in depression and playing mental games, and I gave him, some of the descriptions of how we do this, and he said, "Wow, I hear what you're saying, but that is really a sad commentary to think that I've done this to myself." And I said, "Well, okay, but that's just one lens to look at it through. You look at it through that lens, and it's very sad. You flip to a different lens, and wow, how liberating. If I was the one who was holding the keys to the prison that I built, I can let myself out or just destroy the whole prison."
Absolutely.
So the very same thing that is sad is extraordinarily liberating. And it's our choice. As Way of Mastery talks about it, I have the infinite capacity to choose the focus of my conscious awareness. And it is the focus of my conscious awareness that creates my experience in each moment.
Absolutely. And if we find ourselves, we start looking at that, wanting to lash out or leave, that reaction is in order to protect the weak truth within us. And the more untenable someone's position is, the more agitated will be their response to newer conflicting information. It's like, don't show me that, don't tell me that. And the more violent will be its reaction in order to protect that blockage of truth that it lives in. It's kind of the weakness masquerading strength. And, again, back to our celebration of Memorial Day, that this weakness masquerading as strength is a single root of all violence. The truly strong don't have to use violence. It's just not required. And millions have been destroyed for going against a power structure that's based in blockage of truth. And all the sophistry that comes with it, all the subtle lies, all the falsehoods that come with it. It's just amazing to see how it will rear its ugly head to attack, and that on the other side of that is a human life, a human being. I don't care how weak and blustery or whatever it is, the reclamation of this awesome human life that you have is worth everything that you need to go through to produce a fully functioning, actual human existence. And if you want to tap into the definition of human existence, hold a newborn child. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to. You'll notice that when you hold a newborn, you don't go through your mind thinking about what's going on. You're in an experience. And I'd offer that you are designed to have that experience 24/7, 365, because you are an awesome human life. And if your mind has been filled with something else, okay, there's work to be done. So what? That's what we're talking about, is that work in order to reclaim your human life. And as we reclaim that human life, and it's the forgiveness process, it's a daily application of the tools that crash the output of what we call the dissociated mind, the part of ourselves we haven't wanted to deal with. And as you choose to let that go, as you choose to get free of it, the awesome results you produce will just boggle your mind. It will open the space for you to absolutely claim and create the best year yet of your eternal life. Have an awesome day. If you're in Chicago, come join us for the workshop starting tomorrow. Look on our website, www.whyagain.com. Blessings. Bring a stranger to the show tomorrow.
On Monday. See you Monday.
Thank you for listening to Mind Shifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Rice, and his wife Jeannie, who present that internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeannie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeannie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.